Front page story in yesterday's Sunday Times, which listed off 7 Man United players who might not be at the club after the summer. De Gea is free to sign a pre-contract, according to the Sunday Times, from next January. You've got Pogba, then Bailly, Lukaku, Juan Mata, Alexis Sanchez, and there's one that I'm forgetting. But you get the picture. There's a massive potential summer turnaround, and I think, with the exception of De Gea, they're going to get good money for most of the rest of them, and actually it'll then be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's team and his club and his ethos and his belief system and his players.
Lads, you know me over now, what are we, 17 years?
17.
I'm not an obstreperous, bullshit, pedantic idiot, however. Assuming that mantle just for the moment, what the hell? Absolutely what the hell? What do you think, not you guys, Sunday Times, what do you think United fans are thinking about right now? They're thinking about Barcelona. They're thinking about the Champions League. They're thinking about if they perform with the resolution that they did against Paris Saint-Germain, not the football tactics, they might get the Champions League semi-final. What are they thinking about? They're thinking about keeping Chelsea and Arsenal off their backs and ensuring that they're top 4, top 3 even, which was firmly within their grasp until recent results. It's now not impossible. Top 4. Manchester United fans, and they count because they're the ones that you are broadcasting to, the Sunday Times are writing to, are thinking now, today, tomorrow, Wednesday, next Tuesday, where will Chelsea, where will Spurs, where will Arsenal trip up? These things you've reported on, the reality, I accept. But if you want to skip ahead of the most important 8 weeks United have had since Ferguson retired, then the thing to start with is that the club are looking for a director of football. It's my understanding that Ed Woodward understands now that, as good as he is at the what would you call it, the package of things that brought him to the head of the club, that the football side of things, he is now accepting it, not his 40, it's not even his 38 or 39.
Hey.
So the changes that you've talked about begin there. And, you know, I'm not deliberately being a Victor Meldrew, but, you know, you're football people. It's a football station. You know, by Wednesday, Old Trafford will be hosting the chance to see if they can stick one on the jaw of the Spanish champions-elect and make the Camp Nou return leg 6 days later easier. I think these are the things that preoccupy, rather than how quickly they can get rid of Alexis. And also, listen, my little parcel of information for you now that you've raised that subject is that while De Gea and the club haven't agreed the sum of money, the club know that De Gea wants to stay, would prefer to stay. That he'll reject all other offers? No. But it is his absolute preference to stay on at United. And therefore, if United handle that negotiation well, you're talking about detail, not wrestling somebody back who doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly obvious thing, and you can see it on both sides. His level of performance, the money they have, and the cost of replacement, all of the things, whatever it costs to keep David De Gea playing at this level, lock him in, make him a career lifetimer, let him retire as a Man United player, and you've got one of the best goalkeepers in the world for the next decade. It's like, it makes absolute sense, irrespective. Otherwise, you're paying 80 million quid in the transfer fee. You might as well just give him that 80 million quid and not worry about it. To go back to the game, obviously, Barcelona came through a tricky game against Atleti on Saturday evening, where they had a numerical advantage for 60-odd minutes, almost, maybe a bit less. What lessons are we to draw from these games? And is there ever any, are we, because of the proximity to a big game, sometimes we might invest too much in what's happened, but at the same time, there must be some indication of how we expect them to perform at Old Trafford on Wednesday night.
Well, if so, then, you know, you would have taken heart. I spoke to Michael Carrick on Saturday night. He was there with Mick Phelan and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, both of whom were a little bit more in vision. But the three of them were able to go and assess properly the way that Barcelona were playing. I think they'll have gone away heartened. None of them didn't understand how clever Busquets is on the ball if you give him time. None of them learned something new about Gerard Piqué or about Ter Stegen or Messi. What the food for thought that they've been given, genuinely, lads, is that while Atleti played as good a game, either with Costa or without Costa, as they played all season, that was their elite performance all season, including the 2-0 win over Juventus in the Champions League at home at Metropolitano. Indeed, I was co-commentating with Steve Archibald, and his point of view was that was redolent of the first 4 or 5 Simeone years. elite in positioning, confidence. So, okay, I've made my case about Atleti, that they were superb. And therefore, you mark Barca out of 10 or 20 or 100, however you want, based on how their opponents allowed them to play, how clever their opponents were about damaging Barcelona in the areas that they don't like being damaged. Still, having said all that, Ger, Barcelona were out of personality. It wasn't like the 4-4 draw at Villarreal, where the spine of the team was missing. And you put it down to the fact there, in the Madrigal in midweek, that Umtiti was short of match practice. Longley didn't like not having Piqué next to him. Rakitic wasn't protecting Busquets. Messi wasn't on up front. As soon as you begin to put that together, and you admit that Barcelona scored 2 goals, there was one absolutely extraordinary All Black save, one-on-one from Suarez, a good save, one-on-one from Coutinho, and Alba hit the post. If you simply want to look at the stats, which all of us are taught not to do, particularly in answer to a type of question you posed, you could come away thinking, well, Barcelona were at their normal level, and that he just did a very good job of staunching them. Not so. There was a bit of football personality missing at the weekend, and there the food for thought for Phelan and Solskjaer and Carrick is, did we see a blip? Was there a slight hint of nervousness about this is genuinely the final step, we win this and it's the title? Or is there a dip? Is there a dip anything like akin to the thrashing in Paris, the thrashing in Rome, the hammering in Turin against Juventus over the last 4 years in the Champions League? Are those things coming? That's what Manchester United need to test. I don't think it's quite that bad. I do think Barcelona were relatively poor in the things that make them different, that separate them from English Premier League teams. I think those things were absent at the weekend, and they can't afford to be absent midweek. 2 things to say. Vidal will be back. He would have played at the weekend. I think he might play at Old Trafford. And while Dembele's not fit to start, match fit to start, I think he'll be in the travelling squad. So there'll be minor adjustments. There'll be different things available to Valverde, who's proving a very good coach in situations like this, where he has to unpick a team, pick his team correctly, and generally understand how to manage a match.
Given the quality of the team that Barcelona have and the players and the nous that they have, ordinarily I would expect there to be far more people making the case for them to win this competition at this point, given who's gone from the tournament and given the other teams and just the ghosts that all of them have who are still left in the competition. And yet nobody is really standing on the table and banging it, going, this is Barcelona's to win this year and they've got to do it. Yeah,
you're right. And I think it's justified that nobody's doing that, because I don't see them anything at their very best. They're still the best, Manchester City included. I'm sorry, at Barcelona's very best, this let's say this 14-man squad, if they're all playing at their peak at this stage of the season, how many teams are, they're the best team left in the competition. Not only because they're extremely good, but they're brutally determined. We've heard little things from Pep. Pep got hammered in autumn, didn't he, by sitting in a press conference saying about Manchester City, this is still a club where people don't automatically demand every day that you win the Champions League. And he introduced that theme. People thought it was just a little bit of camouflage. Don't worry, but we'll sneak up behind everybody. No, he meant it, that the environment that he knows exists at Real Madrid, at Juventus too now, and at Barcelona, which is win the Champions League, is an important driving factor, and Barcelona have it. Piqué, Busquets, Rakitic, Messi, they've all spoken about their utter determination to win this competition again this year. But first of all, Jared, when you see a grand old champion taking challengers, punches to the jaw, and you find out the jaw is glass, as repeatedly as we have done, Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain, Roma, people are right to say, well, is it any different this year? And I think that there is, the Barcelona have moved back towards the pack, and they are very good, they're very organised, and Valverde has made them a better functioning 11, less reliant on the positional and possession play that made Barcelona stand out since Rijkaard took over, but particularly in the Guardiola years. It's not the same football, and therefore they're not as outrageously different on form, but they have Messi and Suarez and Alba, and those partnerships with Messi, Alba and Suarez particularly, are extraordinary, and therefore if Barca are absolutely on form, they win this tie and the next one in the final. If they're not, then they're close to the pack.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit earlier on about the Guardiola happiness to just insert the whole notion of the quadruple into the conversation.
Yeah, like I'm not sure what you think of this, Graham, but it certainly seems from just reading around reports this morning that there are sounds from Manchester City that they're quietly confident of making this quadruple happen. Like, I do wonder if Pep is the type of guy who actually thrives under that. In fact, I know he definitely is, but is Manchester City the type of squad that can thrive under that expectation that they should go close to a quadruple, because that is a humongous expectation?
Yeah, I really like your point. I think that Pep does thrive at maximum. He's not inhuman. We've seen moments of burnout before, and therefore I don't think if you were asking me after 2 or 3 seasons of really chasing quadruples hard that we'd be having the same conversation, because he's not immune to pressure. But he definitely does feed on having to work hard, having to demand from the players every minute of every day. I interviewed Busquets on Thursday, and I talked about how rare it was to have heard Pep Guardiola talking after the Wembley final against Manchester United about how brilliant the football was, that the football for about 35 minutes was perfection, all he'd ever aimed for. And I said, listen, Pep's very demanding. You never hear that from him. Busquets was like, listen, we became accustomed to the fact that we knew we'd played brilliantly, and he would tell us we weren't even the better side on the pitch, simply to try and keep us hungry. And therefore, taking that and extrapolating to what you're talking about, the fact that Pep demands quadruple level performance from his players all season, every season, is aided by the fact that the players now buy into it. That's the thing I think that you've elicited from the atmosphere at City's training ground, at the academy, that when you're as demanding as Guardiola is, but the players all know that there really are 4 trophies within touching distance, then what you get is a much quicker transition from the players Mendy apart, because man has to disco dance. When a man's got a disco dance, man's got a disco dance, shark or not shark. But the rest of them are I think, clicking into that mindset that you've said, that if they give elite performances day in, day out, not match in, match out, between now and the end of the season, then they might have an historic 4-trophy haul. Yeah, I think the atmosphere is good there. Squad-wise, I'll be shorter. I still have my doubts. I genuinely don't think that City are ahead of the pack in the Champions League, and I've tipped Liverpool to win the title. So between the title of the Premier League, one of those goes, stops the quadruple. I genuinely think Liverpool win every game between now and the end of the season, and I think that this amen corner, if you forgive the Masters comparison, that's coming up for City, where it's Palace and Spurs and United and Spurs and Spurs and Spurs. How is it, 6 or 7 games against Spurs?
12.
I think you drop a point there.
Graham, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, fellas.
Enjoy the week. It's Graham Hunter joining us here this morning to talk to us about some big Champions League, some hot Champions League action coming your way. So there is a game tonight. Chelsea playing West Ham, completely unheralded in the league, in the Premier League. It's Liverpool Porto tomorrow at 8, Spurs Man City, and then on Wednesday, as we were talking about, at Old Trafford, Man United against Barcelona and Ajax against Juventus.
The Declan Rice derby tonight, of course. I actually agree with your point there about the Champions League contenders or pretenders, that there is severe kind of evidence of baggage around all these teams that are still left in it.
Yeah, like
it really is.
They've all shat the bed at some point over the last couple of years.
And it's the interesting point that he makes there about Busquets. Like that.
This is the one year, by the way, if Atletico Madrid were left, you'd be like, this is their chance. They're going to win it this year.
Yeah, but they're not.
I know.
Like, because their ghosts have also crept up on them and stabbed them in the back. Like, if there's a chance that everybody, you can make a case for all of these teams bottling it at one case or at one point or another here. But like, you do wonder, like when he brings up those Busquets quotes post Wembley, the idea that Pep would still be giving out to them after near perfect performances. It's very simple psychology. He's clearly a stick man rather than a carrot man, and that obviously worked on those Barcelona players. What are you laughing at?
Stick man.
Well, he's an actual human being. I don't know. Is that was peak Barcelona? That was as good a football team as I've seen in my lifetime. Is that part of it? Like, is that the most harshly treated those Barcelona players have ever been treated under Pep Guardiola? Time will probably tell.
Nobody can come in afterwards and treat them as harsh and have any respect, because it's like we were the greatest team of all time.
It's true.
Yeah, I think it's fair enough that that was his, but it didn't work for him. It was unsustainable. He should still be at Barcelona. They should have won 3 more Champions Leagues under Guardiola. He should have stayed there. He should have been able to calmly energise himself and that team. Like, that's the lost rings, is the Guardiola at Barcelona, when actually he was in New York, Munich and in Manchester. When he is 70, he's going to look back and go, I walked out in the best team of all time at the peak of their powers, just having reached football perfection.
Unless...
Why did I do that? Why did I do that? I had Leo Messi. I had the greatest player of all time on my team, and I walked away to learn English in New York for a year and to work with those Germans who hated me. Why did I do it? For what?
Well, I think there's a chance that Barcelona fans will be asking themselves that as well.
Everybody's going to be asking themselves that.
As much as it's been relatively easy for Manchester City to learn and improve because of the bottomless pit of cash they have learned and they have improved. They have looked at failings of managers and sporting directors and scouts and recruiters all around the world and applied it to their own club. They've run their club really well. Granted, as I said, a caveat being that they could do it with a bottomless pit of cash. They will study how Pep finished at Barcelona and they will say to themselves, how do we make sure this does not happen at our club?
It doesn't matter anymore.
I know, because they don't have Lionel Messi and they never will have a team potentially as gifted as that.
But Guardiola's missed the greatest opportunity he's missed the opportunity to fulfill his destiny, really.
Because it has to be at Barcelona. But he can get the next best thing.
No, it's never. There's always going to be. He's going to be the unhappy billionaire. He's going to be like, what? That thing we had, it was perfection, and politics got in the way. Politics and ego and bullshit got in the way. We can talk about this again because it's never going to go away. It turns out it is the ghost that will haunt. Even if Guardiola wins 3 Champions Leagues with Manchester City, will he be fulfilled the way he would have been if he'd won 5, which he should have done with that team?
No, of course not, because it's Barcelona. There is no way you can replicate that unique scenario anywhere else because of his background. But on a purely cold statistical success level, he might just be able to do so. But it's into the future.
The stats, no problem. So you can match the stats. Does he love stats? Do the stats keep him warm at night in his silk sheets?
No, he'd rather write 50 beautiful poems than have 50 billion pounds in his bank account.
So who called him snowflakey? Jim Beglin?
Jim Beglin, yeah, on NBC's coverage yesterday. I was out and about, that's why I wasn't watching it on actual television. Let's put it down to that.
They will knock on your door and no one will be able to save you. That's what's coming. They will knock on your door and you are going to prison.